There are faces that belong to an era. Faces so familiar, so woven into the fabric of a generation's childhood, that seeing them on screen felt less like watching a stranger and more like catching up with an old friend. Kristy McNichol was one of those faces. She had a quality that is genuinely rare in Hollywood, a naturalness that couldn't be manufactured, an emotional honesty that couldn't be coached. When she cried on screen, audiences cried with her. When she laughed, they felt it in their chests. For nearly 2 decades, she was everywhere, on television sets across America, on the covers of teen magazines, on talk show couches, and in the hearts of millions who grew up watching her. And then, without warning, without scandal, without so much as a proper farewell, she was gone. For years, people wondered. Fans who had grown up with her asked the same question: what happened to Kristy McNichol? The silence was deafening, especially for someone who had once been so luminously present. Some assumed the worst. Others held on to hope. But the full truth, the real, complicated, deeply human truth behind her disappearance, is a story not just about one actress, but about the price that Hollywood extracts from its youngest and most vulnerable stars. It is a story about survival, about mental health, about the courage it takes to choose yourself over the spotlight. And now, more than 3 decades after she walked away, we finally know the whole picture. Kristy McNichol was born Christina Ann McNichol on September 11, 1962, in Los Angeles, California. Her parents, James McNichol, a carpenter of Scottish and Irish descent, and Carolyn, a registered nurse of Lebanese Christian heritage, divorced when Kristy was just 3 years old. After the split, Carolyn raised Kristy and her brothers, Jimmy and Thomas, largely on her own, juggling work and childcare with the kind of quiet determination that defines single mothers everywhere. Los Angeles is a city full of people chasing dreams that were never theirs to begin with. But for the McNichol family, the entertainment industry wasn't a dream, it was simply a door that happened to open. Carolyn occasionally picked up extra work as a background actress in low-budget productions, and on one of those sets, with no babysitter available, she brought her children along. Someone on the crew looked at Kristy and Jimmy and saw something worth paying attention to. The advice was simple: put them in commercials. It turned out to be one of the most consequential offhand suggestions in television history. Both children began auditioning almost immediately. Jimmy had charm and ease. But Kristy had something harder to define, a depth of feeling that seemed to exceed her years. Casting directors noticed it right away. Even in advertisements for toothpaste and breakfast cereal, there was something in her eyes that made you look twice. She wasn't performing. She was simply being, and the camera loved her for it. By the time she was 6 years old, she had shot her first television commercial. By her early teens, she was booking guest appearances on established primetime shows, including the popular drama Starsky and Hutch and The Bionic Woman, connections facilitated partly through family friend Desiana's. But the role that would reshape her life entirely came in 1976. ABC's drama series Family was unlike most television of its era. At a time when American family life on screen was largely sanitized and idealized, Family dared to explore divorce, adolescence, grief, and identity with unusual honesty and depth. The show needed actors who could handle that emotional weight. When Kristy McNichol, just 13 years old, was cast as Letitia Buddy Lawrence, the tomboyish, sharp-witted, emotionally complex younger daughter, the producers found exactly what they were looking for. Buddy Lawrence became the heart of the show. She was not the perfectly behaved TV child of earlier decades. She struggled, she pushed back, she felt things deeply and didn't always know what to do with those feelings. Audiences recognized themselves in her, and Kristy played the role not as a performance, but as an extension of who she genuinely was. Critics took notice immediately. In 1977, she won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Drama Series. She won it again in 1979. She also earned a Golden Globe nomination in 1978. These were not honorable mentions, they were verdicts. By any serious artistic standard, Kristy McNichol at 15 was one of the best dramatic performers working in American television. The show ran until 1980, and by its final season, Kristy was one of the most recognizable young faces in the country. She was on magazine covers. She was a guest on major talk shows. She was being described, universally, as the girl next door, warm, real, approachable, and gifted. In 1978, she and Jimmy even ventured into music, releasing the album Christy and Jimmy McNichol for RCA Records and appearing in a Carpenter's holiday television special. Behind all of it, however, something was quietly going wrong. The pressures on a teenage actress carrying a major television drama are difficult to overstate. Christy was not simply acting, she was the primary breadwinner for her family. Her mother managed her career, which meant that the line between parent and professional representative was permanently blurred. Years later, Christy would describe feeling like the adult in the household, the one who had to be responsible while everyone around her had the luxury of being less so. There were no real school years, no normal adolescence, no ordinary friendships formed over years in the same classroom. There were call sheets, filming schedules, publicity commitments, and the constant, exhausting pressure to perform at a high emotional level day after day. She gave the world everything it asked for. And the world kept asking. When Family ended in 1980, Christy was 18 years old and, by Hollywood's logic, free to transition into adult stardom. The industry had no interest in giving her a rest. The offers came immediately and in overwhelming volume, and Christy, trained since childhood to say yes, to show up, to deliver, said yes to all of them. That same year she starred opposite Tatum O'Neal in Little Darlings, a film about two teenagers from opposite worlds making a wager at summer camp about who would lose their virginity first. The material was edgier than anything she had done on Family, and Christy's performance, as Angel Bright, a street-smart girl concealing deep insecurity beneath a tough exterior, was widely praised for its naturalism and emotional precision. Critic Roger Ebert was among those who singled her out, noting the kind of lived-in quality that her performance carried. The film was a substantial commercial success and cemented her status as a major draw. She also appeared that same year in The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, alongside Dennis Quaid and Mark Hamill, earning a reported salary that placed her among the highest-paid teenage actresses in Hollywood history at that point. In 1981 came Only When I Laugh, a Neil Simon adaptation in which she played the daughter of a woman recovering from alcoholism. The role earned her a Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actress and was considered some of the finest dramatic work of her career. On paper, everything was ascending. In reality, the foundation was cracking. She was working without pause in the way that only the entertainment industry demands, project after project, set after set, city after city. In interviews from that period, she spoke about feeling unable to say no, not to directors, not to producers, and not to her own mother. The momentum of her career had taken on a life of its own, and she was being carried along by it whether she was ready or not. There was no one telling her to slow down. There was no space in her schedule, or in her life, for the ordinary human work of understanding who she was. Then in 1982 came The Pirate Movie, a light musical parody that earned her a Razzie nomination for Worst Actress, a cruel public humiliation for someone who had won 2 Emmys before the age of 17. The nomination itself was unjust, a product of a terrible film rather than a failed performance, but in the brutal arithmetic of Hollywood perception, it signaled something. A question had been quietly planted: was Christy McNichol still bankable? Was she still what she had been? The question mattered far less than the toll it took on someone already running on empty. In 1984, Christy was cast in Just the Way You Are, a romantic drama set in the French Alps about a young flute player who wears a leg cast to conceal a disability while searching for acceptance and love. The role, a woman hiding something painful while trying to be loved as she truly is, had a quiet irony to it. Because Christy, at the time of filming, was hiding enormous pain of her own. By her own later account, she barely slept during the production. She cried constantly. She had nightmares when sleep did come. She cried on set, sometimes unable to stop, and she cried through the nights between shooting days. The pressure that had been building for years, the relentless professional demands, the emotional exhaustion of performing vulnerability on demand since childhood, and the additional weight of concealing her sexuality from the public in an era when being gay in Hollywood was considered professionally catastrophic, had finally broken through every coping mechanism she had. She did not return to the French set after the Christmas break. Filming was halted for an entire year while she received treatment. The studio, uncertain how to explain the interruption, released a statement describing her absence as the result of a chemical imbalance. The tabloids, characteristically, were not kind. They painted her as unstable, as a fallen star, as someone who had cracked under the pressures of the fame she had supposedly sought. None of them asked what it might feel like to have been working since the age of 6, to have carried a family's financial stability since adolescence, or to have spent years carefully hiding a fundamental part of yourself out of professional fear. Christie returned to finish the film. When Just the Way You Are was released later in 1984, audiences responded to what they saw on screen, a fragile, luminous, searching quality in her performance. They could not have known that the fragility was not acting. In the late 1980s, NBC offered Christie a role that seemed like exactly the kind of stability she needed. Empty Nest was a sitcom spin-off of The Golden Girls, set in Miami, and Christie was cast as Barbara Weston, a police officer living with her widowed father and navigating adult life with warmth and humor. It was lighter fare than Family had been, less emotionally demanding, surrounded by an experienced and supportive cast and crew. She appeared in over 100 episodes of the series across its run, and for a while it seemed to be working. Audiences were genuinely delighted to have her back. The ratings were strong. There was something comforting, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, about seeing Christie McNichol on Saturday nights. But the internal battle had never really stopped. The episodes of insomnia, the mood swings, the waves of overwhelming sadness that came without warning, they had not gone away just because the work environment had improved. What doctors would eventually identify as bipolar disorder was continuing to shape her daily life in ways that she managed to conceal from cameras but could not escape in private. In 1992, midway through the show's 5th season, Christie made the decision that shocked the industry. She left Empty Nest. Her publicist cited health reasons. The full explanation would not come until 9 years later. In June of 2001, Christie McNichol retired from acting. She was 38 years old. Her official statement was remarkably clear-eyed. "A lot of people have wondered what I've been up to. I retired from my career after 24 years. My feeling was that it was time to play my biggest part, myself. I must say that it has been the best thing that ever happened to me." Also in 2001, she addressed the question that had lingered for nearly a decade, why she had really left Empty Nest. She had been suffering from manic depression, she explained, now more commonly referred to as bipolar disorder. She had not wanted to speak about it at the time because it felt too private. But now she wanted people to know the truth, especially those who were living with the same condition and feeling alone in it. It was a quiet act of courage at a time when mental health disclosures by public figures still carried enormous stigma. Christie was not doing a magazine feature or a daytime television comeback tour. She was simply telling the truth to anyone who